Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
The release of the Epstein files is a conspiracy theorist's dream. Millions upon millions of haphazardly redacted documents, easily accessible, revealed information gaps large enough to fuel any believer's baseless speculation. But amid the mentions of the private lives of the powerful is evidence of real abuses and an opportunity to bring Jeffrey Epstein and others to justice. And yet, conspiracists are still talking about pizza. I'm Caryn Ceolin, and today on The Big Story, I'm speaking with Travis View, a conspiracy theory researcher, about how the Epstein saga is turbocharging a new wave of misinformation online. Travis, thanks so much for making the time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Caryn.
Okay, firstly, we've got to get this out of the way because you're actually named in the Epstein files.
Well,
can you please explain?
Well, yeah, lots of journalists are. The Department of Justice happened to have a collection of lots of articles related to Epstein, or sometimes just QAnon and conspiracy theories. And one of them came from The Atlantic in 2019, in which I was quoted. So if you did Google, if you did use the FBI sort of search feature, or if you use the DOJ search feature, and you search for Travis View, you'd find my name.
I guess, beyond that, what stood out to you about how these files have been released? In many ways, it felt like this was supposed to be an exercise in government transparency, really. And I just wonder, what your takeaway was about how these files were released in the first place.
Well, first of all, it was delayed, beyond this sort of what was required by law, which was like, at once sort of unsurprising and sort of shocking that the DOJ would, do that. But eventually they did release like millions of pages of documents related to internal communications, and there's still millions of other documents that have not been released because the DOJ is citing certain exemptions under the law. But no, it was pretty surprising, and I think it was more illuminating than I thought it would be on Epstein's network.
Yeah, more than 3 million pages, to your point. I think something like 2,000 or so videos, like hundreds of thousands of images. But, also heavy redactions. Not a whole lot of context around the emails and the pictures that were produced. I mean, the Justice Department said itself, cautioned that these files contained what it described as unfounded and false allegations. There were formatting issues with some of the documents. I mean, all of this raises, of course, more questions than answers, and I think probably only drives people to want to search for more.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of sometimes like strange references. There was one talked about email where Jeffrey Epstein thanked someone for their torture video that was sent to them.
Yeah.
And there's lots of things that are just unexplained. And these kind of information gaps, I mean, encourage a lot of speculation.
Yeah, what do these information gaps do for the online world, and in particular the extremist world? Because it seems certainly like fertile ground for conspiracy theorists to spread their narratives, to be able to cobble together new stories. Like, while everyone's just trying to figure out what the documents mean, how does this play into that?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's obviously a great deal of frustration because you can't really study the Epstein case too long without feeling like there's just a lot that's being covered up. And so, consequently, this is what really causes people to overinterpret and sort of invent new strange interpretations. I mean, this is exactly what happened with the Podesta emails, which were hacked and leaked through WikiLeaks. When people started searching through that, they were sort of unsatisfied with the level of scandal that sort of revealed, and so consequently, they started assuming that certain words like pizza or walnut sauce or other kind of food terms secretly referred to child abuse, which was absurd. And, people are doing a similar thing with the new release of the Epstein files. If you search through these files, you'll see that pizza is referred to over 900 times. But if you read through it, it's in context or referring to literal food.
Yeah, as you mentioned there, the emails contain hundreds of mentions of pizza. It was or is on online speculation that pizza is a code word for sex, or that, a youth sports team pizza party was a pedophile code. Like, in your estimation, though, like, pizza is just pizza. Like, Epstein wouldn't have needed to write in code, does he?
No, no, especially when you really, it was sort of shocking how blunt some people are in their communications. For example, one instance, the billionaire Richard Branson, when writing to email, encouraged him to bring his harem. And so I feel like in these private communications, they don't really feel the need to write in code so much. And so yeah, the food terms, it's just that, food terms.
I mean, all of this, of course, formed the basis of Pizzagate. I suppose, how has this document dump resurrected a conspiracy theory like Pizzagate? Like, was it entirely predictable to you that the Epstein files would do that?
Yeah, a big part of QAnon and Pizzagate is this belief that eventually there's going to be this big disclosure moment where everybody knows the truth. They often talk about this future event where they imagine that everyone will know what they believe to know, and like all of their friends and other people who have scoffed at them and called them conspiracy theorists and stigmatized them and otherwise dismiss them will come back hat in hand and apologize for being so skeptical. And so that's it's a recurring theme that they often, with each passing month, they always claim vindication, even if there's really no substantial evidence of that. The broad outlines of the Epstein scandal have been known for several years. We've talked about it some on the QAnon Anonymous podcast. There's some great reporting done by Julie K. Brown with the Miami Herald for many years. But there's really nothing more. There's really beyond the broad outlines of the scandal. The biggest fantasies of conspiracists have not been validated.
Absolutely. But I mean, like, to your point, like, the fact that we have such bountiful data available and the ease of access to it, especially, like, that to me signals that this is exactly how conspiracy theories thrive. It's allowing believers to kind of see what they want to see. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, but we are talking about how people at the very top of society, move and plan, and that's by its nature partly covered up. So we're left with this sort of this speculation. And sometimes, healthy, reasonable speculation about the nature of elite corruption gives way to less reasonable sort of fantasies about cannibalism.
You mentioned earlier QAnon, and I just wonder if you can explain for us how this release has perhaps, if at all, breathed new life into that.
So yeah, so yeah, so QAnon is sort of a conspiracist narrative based upon the idea that certain posts on 4chan and later 8chan, these image boards, contain secret messages that reveal the true nature of elite corruption. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, a former member of Congress, was a believer. And interestingly, what caused her to sort of break from this belief is personally working with Trump and seeing that perhaps he was not the crusader that she imagined him to be. One interesting development is that sort of like QAnon-like narratives were referenced in the recent deposition of Bill and Hillary Clinton regarding Congress's investigation into the Epstein case. So what happened is that Representative Lauren Boebert from Colorado asked Hillary Clinton if she had reviewed the Epstein files in light of Pizzagate, I guess, presuming that the the pizza references were some kind of code words. And of course, she rejected Pizzagate as nonsense. But interesting, Lauren Boebert also asked Hillary Clinton about this fantastical sort of like myth of a video called Frazzle Drip. And in the QAnon world, Frazzle Drip is a video on the dark web that supposedly depicts Hillary Clinton, and in some cases of the myth, Huma Abedin, torturing and killing a child. Now, this is totally nonsense. It's one of those things that's in the style of urban legends. People always say that they have seen, but like doesn't actually exist. But a member of Congress actually asked Hillary Clinton about this, apparently because she was apparently influenced by QAnon narratives. And it wasn't answered because apparently it was out of the scope of the deposition.
I guess that's a polite way of putting it. I do want to ask you about that, though, because obviously there is evidence of very real abuses and real scandals that have been born out of this document up. But so, too, have a lot of fake AI-generated or altered photos. You know, there have been spoof emails that I have seen on social media made to look like those in the cache. And I just wonder, like, how all of that is blurring the line between what is real and what is fake, and how the Epstein files kind of play into misinformation and our discourse online.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's this has always been a problem because like whenever there is elite abuse, and whenever there is a lack of transparency, people are going to speculate about what the truth really is, and sometimes that speculation travels much farther than the evidence. And we see this like in the Epstein case, where we see some interesting conversations between Epstein and people from Harvard and business elites and these sorts of things, which is interesting and worth covering, certainly. But sometimes you get these fantastical sort of like interpretations. For example, there was a claim that Epstein had a bank account called Baal, named after an ancient demonic entity, and that wound up being sort of just an error in the sort of the OCR scanning of a particular fax document. And so there are people talk about like I said, sometimes they speculate that it has evidence of actual cannibalism, that sort of thing. And so people, it's like the scandal isn't enough. The real substantial scandal, which is for some people isn't enough. They have to go to these wilder sort of explanations about what they reveal, when there are much more mundane explanations of some of the things that they're trying to point out.
Are there any other debunked claims, that have been concocted from these documents that stand out to you?
Well, one claim was that Epstein won the lottery in Oklahoma, because this was claimed because back in 2008 there was a lottery of winnings that was collected by an entity called the Zorro Trust, which happens to be a trust that's owned by Epstein in New Mexico. But contemporaneous reporting shows that this was simply actually a trust created by a woman who worked at a grocery store in Oklahoma, and it's not related to Epstein at all. It's just an entity that happened to have the exact same name. So yeah, this theory that somehow the lottery is being manipulated in order to funnel or launder money to Epstein is, I think, one of those things that's interesting, but when you actually examine it, there's no substance to it at all.
When you hear these sort of wild theories, what is the underpinning thing, I suppose, that makes the Epstein story so resonant in the extremist world?
Well, it's funny. It's like all the way back in 2019, my podcast had an episode called Epstein and the Real Pizzagate, because this is like the closest thing that you could point to that resembles the kind of conspiracist narratives. It's someone who had a billionaire who had mysterious income, who had very high connections across the highest levels of society, and who was able to abuse children for many years with impunity, and was named. And so, as a consequence, it's like once you have that kind of like bare bones story, it's very tempting to speculate even further than what the evidence suggests.
I guess in the same way, like, why do you think, in the same way that conspiracy theorists have, that even like foreign influence operatives or just downright trolls have seized on these files?
Well, it's because it's a great way to muddy the waters and fuel distrust. Here we have a genuine instance of elite corruption that's very disturbing. It was covered for many years, and so that if you can press that further, you can sort of encourage people to be very despairing about the state of society.
Could the way that these files have been released, the way the Justice Department, released them, the lack of public accountability, does that have the potential to radicalize some people?
Of course, of course. I mean, was like whenever there is corruption that is, and then there's little hope of like if it being rectified. I mean, people naturally think that nothing in the society is worth preserving.
I guess just lastly, like, how does the stoking of conspiracy theories, how do they provide a distraction from what would appear to be, at the end of the day, a shared goal of wanting to deliver justice?
Yeah, because once you start talking about rigged lotteries and evidence of cannibalism and other kind of like fantastical things that are not substantiated, it distracts from the real, more substantial questions about how people in high positions of power and high levels of wealth are able to engage in horrifying abuse for many years without the justice system sort of seeking them out or correcting it in any way.
Do you have any advice for people who are trying to make sense of this story? How should they approach this without falling into those rabbit holes?
Oh boy. Um,
I guess just based on your experience covering this, is there any word of caution you'd issue to the average person who wants to know more but necessarily won't know or doesn't know how to distinguish the real from the fake?
let me see here. Boy, that's difficult. I mean, man, like, I've you know, I've always admired the tools of skepticism. That doesn't mean being totally credulous. That doesn't mean always believing the official narrative. That doesn't mean believing that people in positions of power or positions of high authority are always right or always know what they're talking about. But in each individual claim, just investigate it like a little bit longer. Ask one extra question. Ask, for example, if is it possible that two trusts have the exact same name? You can sort of examine these things more closely and really see if they hold up to scrutiny.
Yeah, it's probably good advice for all of us to take before we read anything or online at face value. Travis, I'll leave it on that note. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that was The Big Story. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this conversation. Send us an email at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca. Reach us on Instagram at FrequencyPods or on Blue Sky at The Big Story. If you know someone who might enjoy this episode, be sure to send it to them. You can listen to The Big Story every day on the Seeker app or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Caryn Ceolin. Thanks for listening.